Team USA camp was supposed to be wide open. No guarantees. No locked spots. Just elite players fighting for a future that stretches all the way to the Olympics. But by the end of one practice, that idea quietly fell apart. Because Caitlin Clark didn't come back trying to prove she belonged. She came back looking like she already owned the place. And while cameras followed the obvious highlights, something bigger was happening underneath the surface. Coaches were watching body language. Players were reading the room. And a few careers may have started shifting in directions no one wanted to talk about yet. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a reset. It's easy to forget just how fast things changed for Caitlin Clark. Her rookie season didn't just make noise, it rewrote expectations. Records fell almost weekly. Logo range threes became normal. Triple-doubles weren't surprises anymore. She didn't just score, she controlled games in a way that forced the entire league to adjust. Then everything stalled. Her sophomore season turned into a grind of setbacks. One issue led to another. Short returns. Long rehabs. Stop-and-start momentum that never let her find rhythm. By the end of it, she'd played just a fraction of the season, and the conversation around her quietly shifted. Not because of what she could do, but because of whether her body would let her do it again. Around the league, whispers started creeping in. Was the workload too much? Would the injuries keep stacking up? Was that historic rookie year something she'd never fully get back to? And now, after months away from real competition, she was walking into Team USA camp. Not for a ceremonial appearance, but for a cycle-defining evaluation. World Cup. Olympics. Long-term plans. This wasn't just about being healthy. It was about whether she was still that player. There's always a moment when a player comes back from injury where everyone is pretending not to stare. That first jog. That first cut. The way they plant their foot without thinking. Caitlin Clark felt it the second she stepped on the floor. She admitted later that there were nerves walking into camp. Not the loud kind, but the quiet pressure that sits in your chest when you know every movement is being evaluated. Not just by coaches, but by teammates wondering if you're still the same. But the second the ball touched her hands, something clicked. Not in a dramatic way. No big celebration. No look-at-me moment. Just comfort. Rhythm. Familiarity. The kind that doesn't come from hype, but from muscle memory built over years. And then she started moving. The burst was there. The balance looked natural. The hesitation, gone. You could see it in the way she changed speeds. 1 second she was floating, the next she was downhill, forcing defenders to react instead of think. That's usually the last thing to come back after injuries. Timing can be trained. Shooting can return. But that instinct to explode without hesitation? That's different. Coaches noticed immediately. Cara Lawson didn't need a stat sheet. She watched how Clark defended, how she closed space, how she slid laterally without favoring anything. Later she'd say Clark looked good on both ends, a simple sentence, but in that environment, it carried weight. Because this wasn't about one drill or one shot. It was about whether Clark trusted her body again. And more importantly, whether her body responded. As the practice went on, something subtle happened. Teammates started spacing differently. Cuts became sharper. Players sprinted a little harder, not because they were told to, but because they believed the ball might actually find them. That's when it stopped feeling like a return. It started feeling like control. And if you're enjoying how the story is unfolding so far, that's the kind of deep breakdown we do here all the time. The moments underneath the highlights that actually decide careers. By the second practice, it was clear this wasn't just about Caitlin Clark scoring again. In fact, the most important thing she did had nothing to do with the shots she made. It was the way she read the floor. Some players play fast. Others play smart. Clark does something rarer. She plays early. She sees actions before they fully form, which means defenders are already late by the time they realize what's happening. You could see it in the smallest moments. A defender leaning half a step too far. A big hesitating on a switch. A cutter flashing for just a second. Clark didn't need those openings to be obvious. She punished them instantly. That's what separates her. Even when her shot wasn't falling, defenders stayed glued to her. Not out of respect for one possession but fear of the next. That gravity warped the floor. Help defenders stayed higher. Lanes opened wider. And suddenly, everyone around her looked more comfortable than they had any right to be. That's not accidental. Most guards need things to go right before they take over a game. Clark creates advantages even when nothing is clean. One dribble handoff turns into a downhill attack. One defensive rebound becomes a fast break before the defense can organize. And the passes, they weren't flashy for the sake of it. They were precise. On time. Thrown to space, not just to hands. The kind of passes that make teammates feel seen. That's when the camp atmosphere subtly shifted. Because now, this wasn't just a talented scorer trying to earn her spot. This was someone making decisions for everyone else. Dictating tempo. Choosing when to push, when to slow it down, when to let a play breathe. And once that happens, the competition changes. Stops being about who can do the most. It becomes about who everyone else functions best around. Team USA camps aren't designed for instant chemistry. Most of the time, it's the opposite. Elite players from different systems, different habits, different rhythms, all thrown together and expected to figure it out on the fly. That's why the first few days usually look messy. Timing is off. Passes arrive a beat late. Players hesitate, unsure of where others want the ball. That's what made the Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston connection stand out so quickly. They didn't need conversations. They didn't need adjustments. They didn't need time. Boston would seal her defender, and the ball was already on the way. She'd cut without looking, confident it would be there. Clark didn't force it. She delivered passes at angles most guards wouldn't even attempt, right where Boston could finish without breaking stride. It looked unfair. Not because other players weren't talented, but because this level of understanding usually takes months. Sometimes years. And here it was, fully formed, unfolding in real time. Coaches noticed immediately. When Clark grabbed a rebound, Boston was already sprinting. When Boston established position early, Clark didn't hesitate. That kind of trust changes how everyone else plays. Wings ran harder. Guards cut sharper. Players knew that if they did their job, the ball would find them. That's contagious. And it didn't stop with Boston. Jackie Young slid into the action seamlessly. One quick decision from Clark turned into a layup before the defense could rotate. No overthinking. No wasted motion. This is the part people miss when they only look at box scores. Clark doesn't just elevate her own game, she simplifies the game for everyone else. She removes hesitation. She creates clarity. And in a camp where roster spots are limited and pressure is everywhere, that clarity becomes a weapon. Because now, it's no longer about potential. Every Team USA camp reaches a point where effort isn't enough. Everyone here is talented. Everyone here works hard. Everyone here believes they deserve a spot. What separates players isn't ability. It's how cleanly they slide into what the team is trying to become. And that's where things quietly got complicated. Angel Reese brings real value. Physicality. Relentless rebounding. Defensive toughness. Those things matter, especially on an international stage where possessions get tight and games slow down. But this version of Team USA wasn't slowing down. With Clark on the floor, the pace changed. The game stretched wider. Decisions came faster. Bigs were expected to run, not just battle. Forwards were expected to finish quickly, not hold the ball and reset. That difference showed up fast. While Clark thrived by making quick reads and pushing tempo, Reese's impact relied more on extended possessions. Fighting inside, cleaning up misses, winning effort plays. There's nothing wrong with that. But in this environment, those strengths didn't naturally connect to the rhythm Clark was creating. And that matters. Because international rosters aren't built around everyone doing a little of everything. They're built around roles. Tight ones. Sometimes uncomfortable ones. Especially for players used to being featured. You could feel the contrast without anyone saying it out loud. Clark's presence simplified the game for players who moved with her. For others, The margin for error shrank. Opportunities didn't disappear, they just became different. Fewer touches, shorter windows, less freedom to improvise. That's the part nobody prepares you for. Not losing your skill, not losing your confidence, but realizing the team might not need you in the way you're used to being needed. And once that realization sets in, camp stops feeling like a competition. It starts feeling like a decision. There's a point in every camp where coaches stop evaluating and start confirming. It doesn't come with an announcement. No whistle. No meeting. Just a subtle shift in attention. A little more trust. A little more freedom. And Caitlin Clark reached that point faster than anyone else in the gym. You could see it in how the staff reacted to her mistakes. Or lack of reaction, really. Missed shots didn't matter. Risky passes weren't punished. Because the decision-making behind them was right. That's how you know a player has earned something deeper than approval. She wasn't playing to the system anymore. She was becoming the system. Clark talked constantly, calling out actions, directing spacing, letting teammates know where to be before they even realized it themselves. Younger players started following her lead without thinking. Veterans adjusted naturally because the reads made sense. That's leadership without speeches. Meanwhile, other guards were still fighting for visibility, trying to stand out, trying to string together moments. Clark didn't need moments. She controlled stretches of practice. Long ones. The kind that shape how coaches imagine future lineups. And that's when the reality settled in. This wasn't a battle for the starting point guard role anymore. That conversation had already moved on. What coaches were really evaluating now was who fit best around her. And if you've been following this breakdown so far, you already see why moments like this matter more than any headline. These camps decide careers years in advance, and we'll keep breaking them down as they happen. So if you want to stay ahead of the story, that's how you end up here in the first place. By the end of camp, nothing had been officially announced. But nothing was unclear either. The future wasn't being debated. It was being built. Team USA didn't just bring Caitlin Clark to camp to see if she was healthy. They brought her to see if she was ready. Ready to carry expectations that stretch beyond one tournament. Ready to bridge generations. Ready to be the constant while everything else shifts around her. And by the way coaches talked, and didn't talk, it became obvious they'd already found their answer. Sue Bird's praise mattered more than most people realized. Not because she's generous with compliments, but because she understands exactly what this role demands. She's lived it. She knows the pressure of being the decision-maker, the stabilizer, the one everyone looks to when things tighten. Her focus wasn't on Clark's scoring. It was on her movement, her engagement, her ability to stay connected even after months away from competition. That's not short-term thinking. That's the language of long-term trust. This camp wasn't just about Germany in 2026 or Los Angeles in 2028. It was about establishing an identity for the next decade. And Clark fit that vision cleanly, not just as a star, but as a connector. She brings pace without chaos, confidence without forcing, leadership without ego. And when a program like Team USA finds that combination, they don't hesitate. What started as a question about recovery ended as a statement about direction. The roster would still be debated. Roles would still be defined. But the centerpiece? That part was settled. And that leaves everyone else adjusting to a new reality. One where the future has a face.